So who is PDX Peace? Just to give a really quick overview, most of the major anti-war marches in Portland up until last anniversary, the 4th anniversary, had been kind of planned by one group that disbanded afterwards. And that group decided not to plan the last anniversary. And a new group kind of formed out of that space to plan last anniversary March 18th, that a lot of you might have been at. And that group decided that it did not want to disband after the march, but wanted to have an ongoing anti-war coalition in the Portland metro area. And so that's how PDX Peace kind of emerged. The first thing we did was plan the big March 18th last anniversary rally, the 4th anniversary. And then after that, we split into two separate groups. One group that wanted to focus on defunding the war. They had this whole series of withdrawal Wednesdays to kind of really pressure each of our congressional candidates to stop funding the war. And then the other group, which is largely taking part in this campaign, is the Military Resistance and Recovery Group. Really wanted to focus on building resistance within the military and being able to build an anti-war movement that can support that. And so essentially the two strategies there are deprive the war of funds and deprive the war of the military, two big pillars of the military-industrial complex that we are trying to take down, or at least do our part in Portland. And so Military Resistance and Recovery Group, first thing we did was Agustin Aguayo, who is a war resistor who spent 6 months in prison in Germany, came back on a victory tour after his time in prison, and we had a big victory tour, march and rally with him here, and a forum afterwards, which was really great with a number of IVAW members. And then after that, we initiated an opt-out campaign where we went to high schools. I think some of you might have participated in that. Went to high schools, and essentially during the month of September, high school students can choose to opt out of the military database, the Pentagon database. And so we went and publicized that, gave them sheets in order to opt out and turn into their school's office. And we haven't heard the results from that, but since opt-out campaigns started in Portland, the opt-out rate has gone up, I believe, 60%? Or 30%? 50%?
It went from, it's about 63% now. Before that it was 20%.
Yeah. So we helped really expand that campaign this time around. And now we're starting to initiate the Sanctuary City campaign, which is why we're here. So yeah, if you have any other questions about PDX Peace, feel free to ask them at the end. And, I've been with it since the first meeting, so I can try and answer any questions you guys might have.
So, any questions? Okay, so our next point is why this campaign, what it involves, and I think, Megan, you can volunteer?
Okay, so I think the first thing I'm going to do is read the actual resolution for everyone, because this campaign involves a resolution that will be put forth to City Council. And while there's other projects that are going on other than the City Council outreach, I think the resolution gives a good basis as to why we're doing this and where the campaign is going. And we were hoping to have copies of that, but we don't, so I'm just going to read it. Whereas the U.S. invasion of Iraq proceeds into its 4th year with no apparent plan to achieve peace, and this will have to be updated now, it's the 5th year. Whereas the U.S. administration and the Coalition Provisional Authority of Iraq have failed to meet their own goals to create a stable and functioning democracy, and whereas a significant and clear majority of the United States population believes the invasion and occupation of Iraq has not been worth the cause, and whereas 3/4 of U.S. troops support a withdrawal of forces from Iraq, and whereas the people of Iraq believe a withdrawal of U.S. forces would increase stability and safety in Iraq, whereas over 3,000 U.S. soldiers and military personnel have died in Iraq. It's close to 4,000 now. Close to 20,000 have been injured, and tens of thousands of Iraqi civilians have been killed by both U.S. and Iraqi sectarian violence. And whereas the continued occupation of Iraq requires the increased use of National Guard soldiers, depriving Oregon and the nation of much-needed first responders for hurricanes, forest fires, and other disasters. And whereas the invasion of Iraq is at least of questionable legality, as no United Nations resolution to invade Iraq was granted, and the United States was never attacked by Iraq. And whereas under the law of land warfare, the United States military forces are under no obligation to obey illegal orders. And whereas a political, moral, or religious objection to the Iraq war and occupation is a fundamental human right. And whereas sexual violence against women in uniform by other soldiers, particularly in the theater of war, is a persistent and widespread problem that no individual should be forced to endure. And whereas individuals refusing service in the Iraq war, rather than remain in hiding, retain their right to work, live, and provide support for their families, should the military fail to detain them. Let it be resolved that 1. Portland City Police and Multnomah County Sheriff's Office will not execute federal warrants for soldiers who are absent without leave from the U.S. military, for soldiers wanted for missing movement and desertion, so long as the soldier is not wanted for any military crime of violence. And 2, no Portland City or Multnomah County money shall be used to house and detain soldiers who are wanted by the military for refusing deployment or service in the war in Iraq. And 3, if the underlying reason for the military warrant is unknown, the sheriff and his designees will make all reasonable inquiries to determine the justification for the warrant before taking the warranted individual into custody. And 4, if the underlying reason for the warrant cannot be readily determined before detention, the warranted individual may be taken into detention custody. But if at any time during detention the sheriff or his designees learn that the soldier is wanted by the military for refusing deployment or service in Iraq, then that soldier shall be immediately released without delay. And 5, any soldier arrested on a military warrant shall be given a preliminary hearing in front of a magistrate or judge within 24 hours. The purpose of the hearing shall be to determine the underlying reason for the warrant. If such reasons are found to only include absent without leave, missing movement, desertion, and related offenses of refusing deployment or service in Iraq, then the individual shall be ordered released immediately. So the background, I think, for this, we all have an understanding that the war is illegal and immoral, and we don't support it. But I think one thing that the peace movement hasn't necessarily been known for is actually providing substantial support to the military. The administration and the mass media has created this distinction that supporting the troops means supporting the war, and that's something that I think we all grapple with because we all do support the troops. And so I think this Sanctuary City campaign is one way to demonstrate that we do support the troops, especially those troops who are willing to speak out and speak the truth about the realities of this war. And it's also a much-needed campaign at this time. Desertion in the military has actually been on the increase, as can be expected. It's gone up 80% since the Iraq War started. In fiscal year 2006, there were 3,301 soldiers in the Army alone who went AWOL. And in 2007, that went up to 4,698. So there's over 8,000 now since the war started, and those are official military numbers. From the sources I've spoken to, those are probably actually low because you only get listed as AWOL or a deserter if the Army decides to pursue you. And so there's some people that they opt just not to pursue, both because they don't have the resources, but also because if they don't pursue you, they don't have to count you. So those numbers are actually probably higher. So with this ongoing trend, and a trend that's so important because as we've seen historically with Vietnam, it's really the voices of the soldiers that kind of turned the movement around and gave it power. And the same thing is happening in this movement. Iraq Veterans Against the War are becoming more and more organized and are leading the way of the peace movement. And so our goal is to create a strong base here in Portland to support any soldiers who do decide to go AWOL, and we want to have a place for them. And it's also especially pressing because just on Thursday, the Canadian Supreme Court determined that war resistors from the United United States do not qualify for refugee status in Canada. There were 2 of the first soldiers who went up to Canada who had this ongoing lawsuit and just got to the Supreme Court, and they were just denied refugee status. And now those 2, as well as all the other war resistors in Canada, face deportation back into the U.S. So, you know, Canada, not that soldiers should have to go to Canada, but that was an option previously. It's now looking like that's not going to be an option anymore. So we really need to create a basis of support here in the United States. So the goal is to create a sanctuary city in Portland. And like the resolution said, what that means is that the police in Portland, and hopefully we can expand that to be all of Multnomah County, will not execute federal warrants. What happens when a soldier goes AWOL, if the military decides to pursue him or her, they put out a warrant, and that means that if any time, anywhere in the country, they are stopped by police, routine traffic stop, if they need to go to the police because something has happened to them and they need help, you know, if any little thing happens that involves police and they go run your name through the computer, the federal warrant is going to come up. And as it stands now, city police generally pursue those and turn you back over to the military, where you face court-martial, prison, return to combat. You know, they can pretty much do what they want to you. So what this would mean is that our city police would not pursue those warrants if they knew that the reason was for desertion, missing movement, or going AWOL for political reasons. And so that's the goal. And like the resolution said, you know, if they're wanted for any other crime, they would legally be able to be pursued for that crime. It's just purely for missing movement and desertion. So I guess that is the goal. Oh, and the historical element of it is that there is no sanctuary city for GI resistors. There is historically, people may be familiar with the sanctuary movement for Central American refugees. That was big during the late 80s and early 90s. And that's kind of the framework that we're going on to build this. That was primarily hosted in the churches. And there are a few churches in the U.S. who have taken on sanctuary, created sanctuaries for GI resistors, but they're still few and far between. And there's no actual city where people can go. You know, hiding out in a church is not quite the same as being free to go about your daily business in town. And so that's really what we're hoping for. And at this point, there's none that exists, so we're kind of the groundbreaker. But from what we've heard, there's a few other cities in the U.S. thinking about something like this. And if Portland can kind of lead the way and make this happen, then hopefully the trend will catch on and we can spread this. So I guess that's all for now. Does anyone have any questions about the framework of the campaign?
If a resistor were arrested for a crime, like say burglary or something, could they could be prosecuted and then turned over to the military?
No, they wouldn't be turned over to the military. If the burglary was committed within city grounds, then the city could prosecute them for that crime, but the city would not act on the federal warrant that was the basis of, you know, of desertion or missing movement. So they could be processed for any crime locally. They could also, if the military wants them for a specific crime, then they could be turned over to the military for that crime. But we're just classifying basically that desertion and missing movement, going AWOL for political reasons are not crimes, and they should not be turned over specifically for that.
Thank you.
Yes?
There's several, in the resolution, I noticed several references to the sheriff. As you know, a sheriff is a county official, so the city doesn't have any control over that position.
Right. Our immediate goal is to get it passed by the Portland City Council and have it be a city resolution, but the goal is actually, if we're able to pass that, to expand it to the entire county of Multnomah. So we're starting kind of where we can, but the goal is to make it something larger.
Along on that line, when I was arrested at policeman's office, the city police arrested us, and they booked us, but then they transferred us to the county sheriff.
Well, that's because the sheriff runs the jails.
Right. So that's why I think they're a part of the resolution. Yeah,
but what they may say, though, the city says, well, we don't control the sheriff, so this doesn't.
Yeah, there would be more work after. The city council is just the beginning. you know, and then we'll go from there to expand it as far as we need to, so that those loopholes don't exist, and they couldn't just transfer them over to county.
Well, since there's only one jail, and it's only controlled by the county, so the city uses the county jail for all their detentions. What I noticed that you made several references to the sheriff only. So the city council will say, well, we don't control the sheriff, so why would we want to pass this? To see, I think you need to make reference to the police, the city police, which they control.
Right, yeah, I think the resolution does refer to both of them. And
early on, but not towards the end.
Oh, yeah, we'll have to review that, but the goal is to work with the county as well, so that we cover all the bases. Yeah.
So that sounds like, and you even mentioned earlier that the resolution would need to be updated a little bit.
Yeah, this resolution was actually written a while ago,
Yeah.
as you can tell, so we will be updating that to reflect current statistics. Also, some of our members have started meeting the city council members, or representatives of city council members, and they're giving some feedback as well on the resolution. So before it actually gets to city council, the resolution probably will go through some more phases and
Will we
change.
get a chance at all to look at that?
Yeah, I think we definitely can get everyone's email off of this list and send the resolution around, and people are welcome to give feedback.
Great.
Certainly.
Anything else?
I just wanted to add a little bit to what Megan was saying and really stress, I think, the political importance of this campaign. The end of the Vietnam War, I think, was largely caused by a massive GI resistance movement. Probably the biggest GI, active duty military resistance movement since the Russian Revolution in 1917. And you essentially had, military people in Vietnam mutinying, fragging officers, refusing to go out on missions, as well as a massive movement on the bases here, and people, leftist papers sprouting up. If people have seen Sir No Sir, I really highly recommend it. It's an incredible movie about the GI resistance movement. Today, we're starting to see the beginnings of that kind of movement. The military is actually way more anti-war than the general population. Every figure that has come out, people who have have had regular contact with people in the military. I know just in Tacoma last week when they were blockading, there were a number of people were blockading the ports so the Stryker Brigade didn't go out. They had tons of people in these Stryker brigades come out, flash them peace signs, thank them for what they were doing, and then go over to the counter-protesters who were saying support the troops and saying, what are you talking about? Support the troops. And I think one of the things that Megan brought up is the absolute hypocrisy of supporting the troops and then not helping them when they get home, when they are obviously scarred from this war. And so I think this resolution does both that. It actually supports the troops the way a real anti-war movement should, and it helps start the kind of movement, the anti-war movement, that can, I think, help engender this resistance in the military and help build it. And kind of what people were asking is, we meet as a group, the Military Resistance and Recovery Group, on Monday nights, where we kind of go over everything that's going to be happening. Like the people who have gone to meet with Eric Sten, and some people are going to meet with Sam Adams, and kind of go over little bits of this campaign as they come in and change. And I'd really encourage everyone after this to come to those Monday night meetings if you want to. I think it'd be great to get more people involved with that. And one thing I didn't mention about the coalition is it's a coalition of organizations and individuals. So you don't have to be in an organization to join. You can join as an individual as well. So.
And one more note, I just wanted to clarify, that the city council resolution is just one step in the Sanctuary City campaign. The purpose of this Sanctuary City campaign is not only to create a legal sanctuary city in Portland, but it also requires building a stronger peace movement in Portland. So in the event that we are able to pass this, which we're optimistic about, and we do create a sanctuary, when the resistors get here, we're able to support them, because much of the time when you go AWOL, you give up everything. You lose your health benefits, you have no employment, you give up everything to do that. And so we have to be certain that we're going to have resources and support for people when they get here. So this is really something of a larger campaign of how to end the war, and to do that by supporting the troops who refuse to fight it.
Next point on the agenda is dynamics of the PDX City Hall in relation to this campaign.
I'm Meredith again, and I think Megan's last point there was really good, that part of it is having City Hall pass a resolution, but another part of it is collecting the kind of support and gathering the kind of support and getting the word out there throughout Portland, which is, I think, largely anti-war, in order to provide support, whether the resolution would pass or not. But as Megan said as well, we are optimistic about the resolution passing, and just to give people a little bit of background about what we know about City Hall, one thing that was passed was Tom Potter and a few of the other council members passed a resolution that limited Portland Police's involvement in the Joint Terrorism Task Force, federal things they were doing, top off for and all of that. So that sets a precedent for saying that our police are not going to be involved with certain federal actions. As well as we know that Eric Sten originally put forward an anti-war resolution, which ended up not getting passed because of work on the Portland Business Council's lobbying, and they had another anti-war resolution after that. So, we have basically a pattern of a city hall that's very comfortable with these kinds of resolutions, and so we'd like to take advantage of that, especially if we look politically where Portland is right now. We have Sam Adams running for mayor, and we have Tom Potter leaving, and so I think the time, we've kind of looked at the situation and said the time is ripe, and it just would take a lot of pressure and a large number of people, to be honest, in Portland working towards that and putting pressure on our council members to reflect what the people want. And so, as a couple people mentioned, we have actually met with Eric Sten, not with him personally, but his chief of staff, just as a preliminary, take a look at our resolution, what do you think, get some advice on that. And they did have a few comments for us. I didn't hear any questions about the sheriff issue in particular, but that's something to look into. So that we do have that political aspect in mind. And Eric Sten, as we know, is pretty anti-war. So part of the goal too is to get a different council member to sponsor it. Because if it's him, people already know his position on that. It's not too far of a stretch. So if we can put pressure on some slightly more moderate people to sponsor the bill and help us by taking it around to the other ones and getting support, then that's pretty much the strategy that we're working with right now. And so part of the logistics of it is we have people getting in touch with the council members' offices, setting up meetings, and then they'll be looking at their schedules and and kind of giving us feedback on where they are politically. And at the same time, though, in order to get to that point, we have to already be mobilizing people and already be gathering signatures. And just to give you an idea, without actively petitioning, without actively having people solely holding clipboards out on the street, we have about 2,000 signatures just from people having clipboards at their various events. And an important aspect of that too, which I want to push for the training element, is to get contact information from these people, especially whether or not they want to volunteer and grow the movement, so that we will have the number of people that it takes to mobilize City Council. Because once these things too, once it comes to City Council, we have to think about the people, as what happened with the Portland Business Council, people who will be counter it. So if we have a lot of people on our side, it'll go over a lot more smoothly. And and that's very important. And again, I have to stress, like Megan said, we'll have more people to support war resistors when they come. So that's really important. Are there any questions about City Hall? I could try to field them.
Has there been any thoughts about the wisdom or the possibility of injecting this into the campaign? Because there will be some seats coming up, I think, in what, November or May? I don't know.
Yeah, Sam Adams, I know, is a big one for that.
Right, he's going to go for mayor, so his seat's going to come up.
Exactly. So there's a lot of politics in that sense, which means we have an opportunity, if we have a large vocal group, pushing them towards a position that we like. At the same time, we have to consider that they may be, if we don't have enough people really writing letters, signing petitions, and being on the ground on this, then they might have the other direction too, which is why we really have to grow it politically. They might want to play it safe, but we'd like them to see playing it safe as being on our side. And I think Portland, just politically is a pretty good place to do that at. And hopefully, in a larger sense, it'd be nice to set a precedent for that as well for other cities and other locations to look at us, at least that the effort is here to really provide support to resistors, not just put them at the front of parades, but to really offer them something. I think that's one of the best things we can do in the anti-war movement. Travis?
What are the chances of making sure that working with a moderate doesn't compromise or neuter a lot of the demands?
I think that's a really good question, and I think that will be something that we are faced with once they, to put a hypothetical situation forward. If we got Sam Adams or even Randy Leonard or something on board, they might say, well, I'll put you on board, but I need to add this and this or take away that to get it through the other council members. So that's a very real possibility. And ultimately, at that point, it would be the decision of the people who are part of the movement,
okay.
And have really put the legwork in and getting the signatures and put in the time and effort to decide what are we willing to accept. And actually, it's a good point too, as we know recently the Cesar Chavez renaming of Interstate, now it's 4th Avenue. There's a lot of politics involved with these things, and people get angry about compromises or going too far left. So there's that, which is why I really like to highlight not just the resolution itself, but what we're really doing in terms of building a movement. And so it's great to have a legal thing and to have City Council on board and to go that route. But it's also great to know who are my neighbors that support this movement. What does my community think about this? And think about the war and think about war resistors and who can I reach out to if I need to in that sense. So I think that's a great question and something we need to keep in mind.
These signatures aren't tied to voter registration or anything like that, so anybody,
Exactly.
high school kids and all.
They don't be in the state either.
Really?
No, yeah, it's not a ballot initiative. It'd be nice at the end if we said, here are all the signatures we have, such and such where people are from Portland, this many people are from out of state visiting tourists, and then they're on our side too, and it'd be nice if we had those kind of statistics to bring when we do finally bring it to City Council. And yeah, it's not a ballot initiative, so they can be, under 18, they can be a wide range of people as opposed to the narrowness of registered voters within the county, the Portland City Council voting district. So it really broadens our base for support.
How many signatures are you aiming to get?
I have not actually heard a number thrown out there. Does anyone?
We haven't actually set a goal. I think the strategy is to just work with City Council and see if we can get some support, and as the support builds, and there's a possibility too of tying this into the 5th anniversary and commemorative events that will be happening then, and just kind of play the political spectrum and see how things are feeling, and we're just going to continue to accept signatures on a rolling basis, and then if we start getting a lot of support from City Council, we may be able to go forward. But I think the petitioning itself, It's not only just to get support for the resolution to show City Council that we have it, it's also just to get the word out and spread the word as far as possible so that we can build this movement of support in this issue in general. So the signatures themselves are not, you know, key to just City Council. So, you know, definitely keep getting those signatures as a public education type of thing, you know, regardless of what happens with City Council.
Yeah, just to reemphasize some points. Well, one thing we haven't discussed is that I've heard that, you know, because when Portland refused to work with Homeland Security, that some people on the City Council feel that as a result, we missed out on some grants or some business opportunities. I don't know. I basically missed out on some federal monies. So there might be some opposition there. You know, but again, I think, you know, the way that we're doing this, the way this whole campaign is designed, is that this is our petition. This is the anti-war petition. You know, and if we were just meeting with city council people, talking to influential donors and all that kind of stuff, you know what? It wouldn't go anywhere. Even if they passed the thing, it would be completely toothless. You know, however, because we're going out there, we're actually gathering names, we're actually trying to bring in activists, we're actually empowering our own grassroots forces to go beyond where the city council would feel comfortable going. You know, so I think that's the whole crux of our strategy. We're really trying to build a movement.
I guess I just wanted to clarify for everyone, like this training in particular is, I mean, it's just the initial start of this campaign. And it's going to be mostly focused on getting the petition signing rolling, and it's the very beginning of this campaign. That's why there's still a lot of questions out there. That's why we don't have as many answers as we would like for a lot of people right now, because we're just initially starting to do this, to get the word out about it, to start to talk to city council members. A number of other facets to this campaign are going to be initiated down the road besides the petition signing. Another thing that we are trying to do is initiate a monthly teach-in about the Sanctuary City campaign, but also just about the Iraq War in general, but have it really focused on getting people involved with the campaign. And so those are going to be coming up. We're going to be starting to discuss those. And also the possibility, as some people have said, tying it in to the 5th anniversary march, you know, possibility of getting city council members on stage to sign something saying that they'll, you know, support this in front of 20, 30,000 people. You know, there's a lot of possibilities out there, but we're not exactly sure, or, you know, creating our own mass rally or march that this campaign kind of culminates towards the city council or something like that, are all possibilities that are out there. But this is just the very initial part of the campaign. And just I really want to reiterate and encourage people, if you want to be involved with planning the other facets of this campaign, Monday nights, the same place, at 7 p.m. We meet regularly and try and figure out what we're going to do next and the different facets of this campaign. So definitely come. Everyone's welcome to get involved. We'd love to see this thing.
Monday night here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Were you not meeting at Liberty Hall on Monday nights?
We were, but we switched it over when this building opened up somehow.
Because that's really hard for me to get to.
It's the same room.
Okay.
Yes.
By way of promotion, as far as that teaching, I'd be willing to produce and organize a public access program specifically oriented towards that, which could be a pretty good way of getting the word out about that.
I'm from Hawaii, and I was involved in, we have Church of the Crossroads, which is a Unitarian Church in Honolulu at the university, and my best friend chained herself. That's what the AWOL guys did, they all chained themselves together. And I think that she ended up marrying the guy she was chained to. And I think they recently moved to Oregon City, so if I could find him and her, that they would really have, you know, obviously direct experience, so I'll try and track them down.
Yeah, and we are thing, if anyone has contacts, once we get to the point where we're having more meetings with City Council, and if we get it to the point where this gets presented to City Council, we really want GIs, veterans, military families, people with direct relationships that would be affected by this resolution to be present and to give testimonials to City Council as to why this is important. So if people have any experience or connections, definitely put the word out.
As many of you know, I'm at White Feather, and right now we have Daryl living there. So has he spoken?
Yeah, we're talking to Daryl.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I could always bring him with me sometime.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry for being late on Barbara. Have you mentioned so far how many deserters there are from the Army, from the military forces?
Yeah, the desertions have gone up 80% since the war started. There's now over 8,000 in the Army alone, and those have gone up steadily over the years. It was 2,357 in 2004, 2,543 in 2005, 3,196 in 2006, and 4,498 in 2007. And so it's steadily increasing. That's just the Army. The other branches have ones as well. And I also mentioned that those statistics are actually probably low because the military only has to count you as a deserter if they pursue you as a deserter. So anyone that they opt not to pursue doesn't get counted in those statistics. So the numbers that have gone AWOL are probably somewhat larger than those. But there's, on military records, over 8,000 who have deserted since the war began.
It was mentioned on the Bill Moyer show last night, but they had a lower number than that.
Yeah, well, and actually I just saw 2 days ago an article on like the front page of MSNBC about desertion rates and war resistors. So the mass media is picking up on it, which, you know, implies that the Army clearly thinks there's a problem. So it's definitely a very timely issue.
And if you actually talk to vets or like IVAW members, they'll put the figure more at 20,000 to 40,000 because of how low those estimates, because as she said, it's just the people in the military actually pursuing. Yeah, just to put that in perspective.
As another note, too, I've seen some statistic that the suicide rates are really high, too, as another option for these guys they're looking at. So.
17.3 per 100,000, I think it is. That's the highest it's been since Vietnam.
What was that statistic?
I think it was, the last time I saw it counted, about 6 months ago, it was like 17.3 per 100,000, which is the highest since Vietnam.
Patty Murray was just on
Along with the
TV
homelessness.
talking 6,500. She's the representative from Washington. She was on cable, I'm on the cable news station, so it's fairly official. This is getting to that.
So there's obviously a need to build this campaign and build on this campaign because there's a lot of need out there because of these policies.
They're also 26% of the homeless population. Even though they're only 11% of the general population.
So anything else on this point, or are we ready to get down to some of the